We're going to talk about the month of June, which is going to be a really pivotal month for Florida State, it seems like, Michael. What are you seeing, feeling early on here that they're going to be doing differently once summer rolls around to get this thing rolling in the right direction?
Yeah, we kind of saw it last year. They were able to flip Usman Chromo. That was a really big one. There were several flips that they did in 2025 cycle, but it was also like you didn't feel like there was an aggressiveness that there should be with the high school market, and that's totally different this off season, both with the junior days and just the spring visits we see. So I think the biggest change with official visits is like last year there was like 19 official visits on the final weekend. Like this year, you see the majority of the top guys. You see a 5-star in there, and you see a countless 4-stars that are in that first weekend on June 6th. So it almost like a transformation of now it's like, hey, we need to get these guys in there early. We want to be the first team that they see. And I think before it was kind of like they waited till the final weekend, and yeah, but some of those guys were already their decisions were already made in their head. So I think they kind of realized that they saw kind of what worked, what didn't work, and I think this year they wanted to go with more earlier guys. I think even transferring back to the guys they actually signed, I think they signed more in the maybe that first weekend in June last year than they did with the 19 kids. So the hit rate was better, and I think they just understand like you want to get them there so you can kind of set the tone in these recruitments. So I think that's why we've seen that the June 6th will be a big weekend. All three of them will be a big when 13th to 20th. They're all going to be really big, but I think they really wanted to set the tone with some big hitters.
Caden Hall going to be arriving on that June 6th weekend, Michael. Just how vital of a piece you think he is, and where is he on the board for Florida State, do you think?
I think he's massive because that's one of the most coveted positions I think for FSU in this high school cycle. That they need some very talented, high school safeties. I think Caden's probably the top prospect or target for them too. Where I think they've really pushed hard. FSU's put a lot of emphasis on him. He's visited several times. He's grew up a fan of FSU. That's always sometimes a positive, sometimes a negative. But I think overall they've done a really good job, and I think Evan Cooper, the new safeties coach, has really made a strong impact and impression. I think obviously Mike Norvell has his how he impacts things, but I think overall with Evan, the new defense that FSU is going to run under Tony White, I think that's really shifted things and took FSU another level where I think going these official visits, they're the team with the most momentum.
All right. Well, how about the trenches? We can never get too much of that. Every time we said the word trenches on these shows, you folks would probably be drunk if you ever listen to these things.
Yeah.
But just up the road, man, Thomasville, Georgia, they don't have to go far. Guy like Cam Brooks, who's Florida State going to have to hold off, you think, ultimately to win him over? And what kind of prospect do you see when you look at a guy like Cam Brooks, Michael?
Very talented kid. I think Clemson, Tennessee, Auburn, those are the teams that I hear that you're the most involved as far as really setting their way into the recruitment. Georgia's obviously you got to put them in there because they're certainly recruit the Peach State really well. But I think overall, I like how this is trending based on that meeting with Tony White that he had in home, and then Mike Norvell came over there, had a really good just time with him as well. So I think he's a kid that he's not like one of those kids that, hey, I grew up at FSU. He's like a diehard. Like he grew up a big FSU guy. He's visited, he's seen all different type of things. And I would tell you honestly, like before the spring started, I was like, they're probably second or third on this list, even with him liking FSU because of one, the season they had, and two, Cam didn't really know what the system was going to do of how he fit into that 3-3-5 stuff. So I think once they explained it and said, "Hey, you're not going to have your hand in the dirt and all that stuff," that he could just go after the passer and be a pass rusher, I think that really sold him a lot. But I think too he wants to see this practice, and I think this is the thing I talked to Tom Lang about the other night. There is a lot of intrigue and excitement of recruits in wanting to see what these guys look like in a spring practice. What's the scheme like? What sets do they run? What stuff do they do in my position? So I think that's very intriguing to definitely a guy like Cam Brooks, who said he's going to go to multiple FSU spring practices. Also, then he's coming back for that June 6th weekend, and I think if everything keeps trending upward, I think that's a guy you have to put on commit watch. That you could get it done if everything clicks and settles in and you hit on everything that he's looking for. Because he nearly committed last year before that unspeaking the season happened. But I think overall he was really sold on everything. So I think if you show him things where there's a belief and he likes what he sees from the attitude of the team and just his fit with the position, I think he's a guy that you put on that watch list.
I've watched this program perform long time ago. The Magnolia State, Jackson, Mississippi,
Nice.
Jackson Academy, the Raiders, the Brickyard, home of the Raiders. They had like a 28 game home winning streak. It was impressive, man. They won
Wow.
back-to-back state championships. TJ White plays for the Jackson Academy Raiders. Mississippi, though, always a tough pull for
Yeah.
Florida State. But listen, Mario Nash, he's from
Yeah.
Mississippi. Quindarius Jones, he's from Mississippi. And we're keeping things, seems like, on the defense right out the gates, Michael. And linebacker again. Seems like that's a position this new staff is going to continue to hammer home.
Yeah, and that was like my takeaway when he visited for junior day. I was like, I kind of wanted to see what the impressions are, and he was one that I use an example of just a shift of what they do differently. I mean, coming into that visit, FSU was just kind of like, hey, they're a cool team. They're traditionally based and they do good job. They put great athletes out, but I think Tony White did an incredible job on this visit. He really set the tone of this is specifically what we're going to do scheme wise with you, TJ. This is the stuff we're going to do. Illustrated it very well. And you could tell, like, TJ was very moved by this visit because of, like, this is one of the guys where he felt like he was personally being recruited as a not just a skill set, but also as a person. And they did their homework really well of what was going to move the needle. And TJ said that several times in different interviews that, hey, how the defense is run and what I'm going to be, how I'm going to be utilized. That's a big deal. What I'm looking for in a school, and so I think when you see a guy that's had top 20 defenses at both Syracuse and Nebraska, and then you get to know him and you spend time with the whiteboard and all that stuff, and really break down kind of your skill set and how he fits into their program. I think it means a lot that you can make that quick of a first impression. So I think overall he's a guy that they very much have a good chance for.
What do you like about him? I mean, just looking at his film, he just seems to be running around with his hair on fire and finding the ball carrier and punishing
Yeah,
him.
yeah, quick in space, gets off blocks really well. I like how he finishes on his tackles. You don't see as much as far as coverage all the time, but overall, hits like a just a missile when he comes in there. It's just, but the main thing you see is just the quickness and getting in the backfield or laterally the way he chases down plays. I think that's some things I like.
All right, so that's only the first weekend, everybody. We got two more to go. So sharpen your pencils, get some
Yeah.
water in your bottle, and hunker down here as we move to June 13th. Laziah Jackson, Brandon Anderson, another important duo that will be
Mhm.
on campus. Let's start, I guess, with Laziah. What do you like about him? Who's Florida State going to be competing for as we go into this 26 cycle full bore?
Yeah, really rangy guy. I talked about this guy at the start. He's actually the teammate of Usman Chroma. He plays at Lee County. So he's a guy that certainly they know really well. They spend a lot of time on. He's a big fan of Patrick Surtain. He also likes, Tony White a lot. We saw that when he took an early junior day visit. I think FSU, Georgia Tech is kind of the early teams of. This is a kid that also, academics are a thing. For him, something that he'll look for. So I think he'll want to get a more detailed stuff as far as FSU. I think from a personal standpoint, I would give FSU the edge because of the connection he really established with Mike Norvell. Was really personal. Wasn't they? I think they really got into the personal side of him more than they did football. But this guy's incredible. Great talent. Really rangy. Tall for a defensive back, but really looks taller than maybe he's listed in the profile. But I
Six
think
three, Michael. That's a big DB. That's a tall
yeah,
DB, man.
yeah, it is. But he just causes a lot of problems. Whether it's I like when he comes off the edge, and we just saw in the first clip there, really fast, twitchy guy when he gets off the line, and then he's really good in coverage. You see a lot of different things where they put him sometimes, they move him all the way wide out to cover receivers, and and sometimes that, obviously in college there'll be less of that, but this guy can certainly run and track the football. That's something they like a lot. I know from the FSU standpoint, just a guy. I guess the best thing I like about Lasaya is just playmaker and also range. He has such great range as far as how he tracks the football.
On North Cobb County, Brandon Anderson,
Yeah.
offensive lineman. We finally got to the offensive side of things here, Michael. This is a guy that's got, he's got all the big dogs on the list down there, man. We got Tennessee in the mix now with Florida State. Obviously, the Gators, Auburn. How competitive of I just feel like whenever you get a kid from the heart of it, Georgia, and he's interested in all these SEC schools, I mean, you're going to be in for it for all, 10 months of the cycle or however long it goes these days.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay a lot to that RPM. He was a previous Tennessee commit, so that's probably why that's so high up there, why it's red. And then he opened things up. So I think Tennessee has slipped just down for him, but I still think they'll factor. I think the team to beat is FSU. They did a really good job on his spring visit. Just knocked it out of the park. I think we haven't had a chance to talk about Herb Hand. We talk about all these other coaches, but this is a guy that out of all the new coaches, he probably has the widest pedigree as far as the places he's been and the talent he's developed as an offensive line coach. So I think that was a big attraction to Brandon when he visited. They did a really good job illustrating, just their plan for what they would do with Brandon, and that really connected. It connected in a strong way. And Herb's just a guy that's very straightforward. Has kind of a personality that's fun to be around, but it's not like too cocky or arrogant. It's just a guy that you like being around, and the kids like being around the recruits. So I think this is one with Brandon. There's several others that will break down later down the road, but that I think that they're in position to land. But Brandon's the one where if I was making an RPM pick today, I'd pick FSU based on the feelings and the intel I've gotten out of that recruitment.
I mean, good to see Herb Hand paying dividends this early on, and
Yeah.
especially, I guess, as you said too, Michael, talking about the defensive side of things. Herb Hand comes off so well on in-home visits.
Yeah.
I'm sure phone calls, that sort of thing. But for these guys to then be able to come and maybe hopefully check out a spring practice, or at least be able to come and hang out with him in a meeting room and see him shuffle through some film of him working through spring practice by the time they arrive for these visits is going to be huge.
It is. It is. And like I said, he's a very easily approachable guy. It's not too relaxed, but it's also not too always business and stuff. It's like he's a guy that I think players can relate and resonate to, and I think that's showing a lot with these spring visits, not just with Brandon, but other guys. I think Herb's been a very popular name that I've heard as far as coaches from FSU that these players talk about, and these are players that aren't even offensive linemen. So certainly his impact from a relationship standpoint has been very high so far.
All right. There's one other weekend we need to talk about, June 20th.
Yeah.
And listen, there's going to be more than just the faces you're seeing on your screen and the ones that we're talking about. These are the ones that Michael sees some pretty good trend lines on. So it was worth diving deep into it as we sit here and hang out with you in the middle of February or towards the end of February. Can't believe how cool this year is going by. Isaiah Williams, best spelling of a name phonetically ever. Shout out to mom and dad on that one. Out of Tavares.
Yeah.
Who was he committed to at one time? Jose was decommitted, and who's ultimately Florida State going to have to try to hold off to get this young man into the fold, Michael?
Well, ironically, he was committed to Florida State. So nice segue there.
Pay attention, Aslan. Let's say his name seems familiar. Continue.
Yeah, it was. He previously committed. Then they went through whatever happened last year, whatever you call that, and decommitted.
Misery,
then,
Michael. I think it's called misery.
Okay. Well, and so then this new staff comes in. Tony White's a former linebackers coach. Really, they hit it off really well. They moved JP to linebackers coach, which I'd love, by the way, the segue moment. That's his natural position that JP's really good at. So really reconnected on that last. He took a junior day visit. I think I want to say January, and it just went really well. Connected. The big news here, Aslan, is he set up his official visit to FSU for that June 20th weekend. That's the last one. So FSU's going to get the last crack at the guy that they've kind of started to build some momentum with. I think Florida and FSU, probably that kind of battle, I would say right now. But that's a big development that they were able to secure that final visit because in portal recruiting, the early one to me is the big advantage. I think in high school recruiting, getting that last one, of the summer or one of the last ones, I think is a massive deal. And for them to get that last visit, I think it's really going to help them in this recruitment where they get the last say. And he's already starting to feel, some of what JP's doing and what Tony White are telling him, and just likes how the way the usage of the linebackers. I think that's the other thing that possibly led to that decommit last year was FSU didn't use a lot of linebackers in that defense. So this one, you feel like there's a lot more usage of different linebackers, and with a guy like Isaiah, he can play all three of those linebacker spots. So I think he certainly sees the attraction, and I think certainly they're trending back up there as one of the favorites along with Florida. But overall, I think the big news was that the date of that official visit.
It's going to be tough, Michael. I feel like, when kids decommit,
Yeah,
it's really tough to bring them back. But
it
this
is.
is a different guy he's going to be playing
Yeah,
under and working
it
hand
is.
in hand with. So we should probably factor that in. All right. How about we shuttle over to the Panhandle here? Jabril Rawls territory, Pensacola
Yeah.
Catholic, Trenton Henderson, edge guy, 6'4", 225. Good frame, Michael. How's he kind of progressing along a lot of the stock charts, if you will, when it comes to recruiting? When a guy like this, with his size and everything, looks like he's the number 4 edge in this cycle, number 4 overall
Yeah.
prospect in the state of Florida, number 29 in the country. That smells like we're flirting with a 5-star.
Yeah, he's a really good one. Camped at FSU last year too. Grew up an FSU fan. I think a lot of people will be surprised that if you go to the Panhandle, I think even if you creep into Dothan and places like that, there's a lot of
Easy.
kids that grew up fans of FSU.
That's
That
true.
that they like FSU a lot. So I think we see a lot of that with Caden. Caden Hall, he grew up an FSU fan. Then Trenton, the same thing. I think it's the FSU Auburn battle. Auburn's got him on campus. It's kind of swing back and forth, but again, another big development was that fact that FSU's getting that final visit in that June 20th weekend. He's always liked FSU. He's really started to build a good connection with Terrence Knighton, who we haven't even talked about, that's recruiting everybody on the line, not just the edge guys, but defensive tackles. So I think overall he's made a solid, strong impact. And I think the fact that they get that last visit, they can really illustrate just everything with the program when it comes to academics, their system. They probably went over that in the junior day, which he came to in January as well. I think they certainly are a team that they covet this kid really highly. Probably been on him the longest, so I think that's a certain factor where he feels really comfortable with Mike Norvell. Like I said, Auburn's batting them. Those are the top two, I think. And then I think this final visit, I think that could push FSU over the finish line, that they can win this one, because usually when kids grew up a fan of a school and then there's a connection, and as long as there's the fits there and the comforts there, those teams are usually hard to beat, down the stretch. But we'll see, because a lot of these kids sometimes commit 2 or 3 times. So who knows? They could commit and then not commit later.
Just to put a bow on it again, Michael. So it sounds like maybe like a more of a balanced approach, because like you said, it's that last weekend, June 20th. I imagine that's before a dead period or a quiet period. I mean, you're
Right.
getting like the last shot with a guy like Trent Henderson and Isaiah Williams, but
Right.
ultimately they're still bringing in guys, big name guys, really big priorities right from the jump, and not slow playing it ultimately. So what we're seeing here is kind of like a really balanced calendar for June.
Yeah, it's a constant flow. I mean, even I've talked about it before of those 19 official. First of all, I don't like that much. That's just too much to overcome and cover. It's a pain in the butt, but that's fine. I can deal with that. I just think you want to have something that's balanced and not kind of stale when you get to that final weekend, where you see a lot of, you have 12 one weekend, 12 another weekend. We haven't even talked about there's two midweek, two visitors coming on midweek. I think it's very balanced. And then two, I like the fact that they're coming out swinging with the big bat, immediately on the June 6th weekend. To me, that's vital. You need to show that, hey, I think you see a lot of balance from the first weekend to the last one. The first weekend, I think there's 12, and then this last weekend, I think there's 12. So that's kind of what you want to see, or around that, around the numbers, where the numbers are similar to each week. That's kind of what you want to see, where you don't feel like, hey, we're putting all this stock into this one weekend. I think they've really balanced it out in these 3 weekends, and even the midweek. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be exciting. Can't wait for me and Matt to cover all this. And there's guys we haven't even covered, guys that they're serious targets, but we really wanted to highlight the guys that there's trends for, there's recruiting things up and down that I really wanted to focus on. And it's a fun time, and it's a different time. 36 official visitors. I think last year they had 39, Aslan. So it could get up to 40 as far as these official visitors in June. But it's a different world we live in now with NIL and stuff. So it's only going to get crazier, but should be interesting to cover.
So much more, obviously, that will be going on between now and then. Check out warchant.com, the premium recruiting board. It's where all the information, the repository is, everything as it's happening. Michael Langston, Matt Lasseri got you covered.